So welcome, everyone. On behalf of the Board of Directors and staff of the Chamber, I'd like to formally welcome you to our 2025 Congressional Luncheon. Today is about connection, collaboration, and progress. We're here to bridge the gap between Capitol Hill and our main streets to ensure that the voice of North Central Massachusetts resonates in Washington, D.C. I would be remiss if I didn't start off by expressing our sincere thanks to U.S. Representative Jim McGovern of the 2nd District and U.S. Representative Lori Trahan of the 3rd District for their commitment to participate every year in this forum and engage with local business leaders here in North Central Massachusetts. Jim and Lori, thank you for your commitment to our region. Your presence here speaks volumes about your commitment to the region. I'd ask for a round of applause for our two speakers. So I know we're meeting during really challenging times in Washington with the ongoing shutdown affecting businesses, federal employees, services, and so many of our residents here in the region, our friends and neighbors. That makes today's conversation even more important, and we appreciate Jim and Lori being here to discuss these pressing issues with us. The importance of this event cannot be overstated. In today's rapidly changing economic and political landscape, it's vital that our local business community has an opportunity to engage with our federal representatives, and we are only able to host these types of impactful events with the support of our members who step forward to support the Chamber, these types of forums, and these types of opportunities for information, for connection. With that said, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge and thank several of our members who helped make today's program possible through their sponsorship and support. I'd like to start off by thanking our premier sponsor, Fitchburg State University. Recognizing the importance of this forum, Fitchburg State stepped up and helped us launch this event as our founding sponsor about 10 years ago. And I thank them for their commitment and longstanding support. You will hear from Dr. Donna Hodge, president of Fitchburg State University, in a few minutes, but I'd like to ask for a round of applause at this time for their support. So you may have noticed the camera in the back. I'd like to acknowledge and thank Fitchburg Access Television. FATV is here today recording the program and will be airing it in Fitchburg, as well as neighboring communities. They share these broadcasts with many of the communities here in North Central Massachusetts. So that extends the reach of this program throughout North Central Massachusetts. So I'd like to acknowledge and thank the entire team at FATV for extending our reach beyond these walls today. Can we have a round of applause for FATV? And you may have noticed the tall gentleman with the camera in the back, and that is our photographer in Adobe Studios. And can we have a round of applause for him as well? Thank you so much for supporting us with our photos. So he's taking tons of photos of your beautiful faces, and so we're going to get this out on our social media, sharing this event out with our members after the event. So thank you for that. Before we continue, I'd like to take a moment to highlight some special guests. We have some VIPs and elected officials that have joined us this afternoon. So when I announce your name, if you could just give a wave, let everyone know you're here. So first off, we have with us State Senator John Cronin, who's here. Thank you, Senator. State Representative Meg Kilcoyne is here. Thank you, Representative. State Representative Mike Kuzmarek is here. Thank you. I don't know if he's here. I have him on my list, but State Representative Dan Cena, I haven't seen him. Is Dan here? Not yet. Okay, well, he's not here, but he'll be here, so thank him for coming. Fitchburg Mayor Sam Squalia is here. Thank you, Mayor Squalia. Is Gardner Mayor Mike Nicholson here yet? So he's, I don't see him, but thank you, Mayor Nicholson, he'll be here shortly. And representing Senator Jamie Eldridge, Legislative Director Afan Niala. Did I say that right? Thank you. Thank you for joining us. So I apologize if I missed anyone. That doesn't mean we don't love you. It's just you're not on my list here. So thank you. I'd now like to introduce Matt Brune. Matthew is the Chief of Staff at Fitchburg State University and will serve as our moderator for today's program. In addition to the questions that we have prepared with input from our Government Affairs Committee, you will find question cards on each of your tables. There should be cards on there. Please feel free to write your questions, and our staff a little later on in the program will be going around the room and just raise them up, and they'll collect them, and then we'll get those to Matt. And if we have time, we'll make sure we'll get through as many of those as we can. Before he comes up, I'd like to wrap up my portion of the program by introducing Fitchburg State University's president. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Donna Hodge.
Thank you, Roy. Good afternoon, everyone. It's an absolute honor to be with you today. This is actually my second chamber breakfast. And when you're in year 2, you start to note the second things that you get to do. But it's so wonderful to be here today, surrounded by leaders and partners who embody what makes North Central Massachusetts such an extraordinary place to both live and work. My thanks to the Chamber for convening this important gathering, and to Congressman McGovern and Congresswoman Trahan for their steady service to our region and our state. I'm joined this afternoon by members of my leadership team and several of our presidential ambassadors. You'll recognize them by their very noteworthy green blazers. These students are absolutely the best of Fitchburg State, examples of what it means to serve both campus and community. I hope, if you haven't already, that you take a chance to get to meet them before the day is over. But our special guests with me today are 2 of our faculty members and several of their students who represent the heart of our mission at Fitchburg State University. Dr. Paul Weiser, hello, Dr. Weiser, whose amazing moot court program is celebrating its 25th anniversary this year, all stewarded under Paul's amazing, steady leadership, and Dr. Renee Scaparone. Hello, thank you, Renee, who leads our Crocker Center for Civic Engagement. Dr. Weiser's students have built one of the most respected undergraduate moot court programs in the country, learning how to think critically, argue with evidence, and engage in civil discourse, skills our democracy so desperately needs. Dr. Scaparone and her business students and many of our colleagues across the university are doing that same civic work through real-world projects that strengthen our local economies and community partnerships. Events like this one, our Congressional Luncheon, mirror the very principles that those programs teach. This gathering is about, after all, civic engagement in action, collaboration across sectors, thoughtful exchange, and a belief in the shared responsibility we have for the future of this region. And that's exactly what we aim to cultivate at Fitchburg State every single day. Fitchburg State University, as Roy said, has been a proud partner for this chamber for many, many years because we share a common purpose: strengthening the economic and civic fabric of this region. Our mission at Fitchburg State, by statute and by conviction, is to serve the people and communities of North Central Massachusetts through workforce development, through creation of the knowledge economy, and through the fabric of the creative economy that we know riches the cultural life of our region. That mission comes to life at Fitchburg State and right here in Fitchburg in many ways. One of the most meaningful right this moment, something we are very proud of, is called the Fitchburg Promise. This is our new directed mission initiative with 5 of our local high schools: Fitchburg High, Goodrich Academy, Monty Tech, Sizer, and St. Bernard's. So I'd be remiss if I didn't say thank you to our mayor, who partnered very closely with the university. We've been working on this for about 16 months, so it took a second to bring it to life. But this program promises that Fitchburg residents who graduate from those schools with qualifying GPAs are guaranteed admission to Fitchburg State. But that's not the real news. The real news is that they come tuition and fee free. It's a simple but, thank you. It's a simple but we hope very powerful commitment to prioritize our own backyard. We are, after all, Fitchburg State University. And with time and effort and through the strategic deployment of institutional, state, and federal resources, work together to make college more attainable for local families, and to be sure that Fitchburg State families see Fitchburg State as a first choice, the #1 state university, no matter their background, their path, or their plans. This is what it looks like to start at home and invest in the future of our community. But at the same time, I want you to know that we're expanding our reach, welcoming more international students, serving adult learners, creating graduate pathways, all for students to complete degrees and to build knowledge. We're creating programs that align with both regional workforce needs and global opportunity. This dual focus, local investment and global engagement, is what we believe defines us as a public university, and it's being recognized nationally. This year, U.S. News & World Report ranked Fitchburg State among the top public universities in Massachusetts for both social mobility and value. That's a big deal in this moment. That recognition is something that we think affirms what we have believed for a very long time, that public higher education remains the most powerful tool for strengthening families, communities, and our local economies. At our core, we are educators, but we are also conveners. We believe in civic discourse as the cornerstone of democracy and progress. We believe in listening across differences and building partnerships grounded in respect and evidence, and in doing the everyday work of public service for the public good. So on behalf of Fitchburg State University, thank you. Thank you for your partnership, for your advocacy, and your shared belief that this region's success is the success of our Commonwealth. Together, we're not just preparing students for the future, we believe we are building it. So now, as we like to say at Fitchburg State, onward. Thank you. And I believe I have the absolute honor of introducing to you a man who may need no introduction, Matt Brune, who has moderated these for some years ago, for quite a while, our Chief of Staff and our moderator today, Matt Brune.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Dr. Hodge. I am very pleased to be back with you today and honored to moderate the speaking portion of today's program. As you've heard, civic engagement is crucial for the business community to ensure the voice of North Central Mass is heard at the local, state, and federal levels. We are very fortunate today to be joined by two distinguished members of our congressional delegation, whom I would like to introduce now. First, Congressman Jim McGovern has represented his district since 1996. He is the top Democrat on the powerful House Rules Committee, having previously served as chairman, and is a key member of the House Agriculture Committee. A global leader in the fight to end hunger, he successfully secured a White House conference on hunger, nutrition, and health. He also champions global human rights and peace through his work on the Congressional Executive Commission on China and the bipartisan Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission. Please welcome Congressman Jim McGovern. And Congresswoman Lori Trahan is serving her fourth term, representing Massachusetts' 3rd Congressional District, including her hometown of Lowell. The daughter and granddaughter of working-class immigrants, she was the first in her family to graduate from college. Congresswoman Trahan is a member of the powerful House Energy and Commerce Committee and serves in leadership as co-chair of the Democratic Policy and Communications Committee. Please welcome Congresswoman Lori Trahan. Thank you again, welcome. First off, the government shutdown. The current shutdown is officially the longest government shutdown in U.S. history. At this moment, what does a real path forward look like to you?
Well, first of all, thank you. Let me thank Roy, the North Central Chamber, and I'm honored to be here with our fellow colleagues in government. Thank you all for being here today. You know, one of the kind of neat things about being in Congress is you get to meet some really fascinating people. And over the years, I've had the privilege of getting to meet and getting to know a little bit His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And I met with him a little less than 2 years ago in Dharamsala, India. And he gave me these Tibetan prayer beads, which I wear all the time, to help me deal with my negativity, my worries, my concerns, and my fears. And I really can't wait to meet with him again to tell him they're not working. Yeah, you know, look, this is a shutdown that really could have been avoided by one simple action, and that was to extend the Affordable Care Act tax subsidies. The bottom line is that there are tens of millions of people in this country who are now getting their health insurance bills, including in my district and Laurie's district here in Massachusetts, and they're seeing their healthcare premiums double, triple, and in some states even quadruple. And we're getting calls from people saying, hey, look, I can't afford this. But I need health insurance, so I'm going to get behind in my rent, or I'm not going to be able to get food, or whatever. We're going to make some big sacrifices. And then there are others, a lot of young people saying to us, I'm healthy, and maybe I'll go for a year or two without health insurance. And that's like the perfect storm, because that means that you have a healthcare pool in which only unhealthy people are in, and everybody's prices will go up. I don't know why this is such a big deal. This is the right thing to do. Government's supposed to be about helping people, not hurting people. And for whatever reason, the current leadership in Congress and the White House have basically said, oh, no, we're not interested in doing that. Now they're getting pressure from their constituents to do something about it. Marjorie Taylor Greene, of all people, is now with us, saying that she's hearing not only from her constituents, but from her kids, saying the healthcare premiums are going up too high. You got to do something about it. And so that's it. I mean, that's all that needs to happen. And then we can move on. And that doesn't fix the healthcare system in this country. That's a longer discussion, and we're going to have to focus in on it after we deal with the immediate crisis. But that's the way out of this. That's the way out of this. And for the life of me, I don't know why it's so difficult. I don't know. Maybe there's all these egos involved. But the president ought to, instruct the Republican leadership to just work with us to send these tax subsidies, and I think we can move on. And then, the final thing I'm going to say is that, this shutdown is resulting in things that really shouldn't happen. Cuts in SNAP. I mean, never in any shutdown has SNAP benefits been withheld. But all of a sudden, they're being withheld in this shutdown. And we have court orders now ordering the administration to pay SNAP to people in this country who need it in full. The administration is challenging that in court, which is ridiculous to me. You could find $40 billion to bail out some cuckoo clock in Argentina, but you can't find it within your heart to make sure that 40 million people in this country get their food benefits. So I think that's the way out of it, in my opinion.
Yep. So great to be here with all of you. This is my sixth chamber event. It's always such a great opportunity for Jim and I to come and to hear from you around how some of these policies are impacting you. Certainly, we've heard a lot in the last 49 days. That's the last time we were in Washington actually operating as a functioning branch of government. And everything that Jim said is exactly right. I mean, this is, it's ridiculous almost to be sitting here saying, like, what is the path out? How about just come to the negotiating table and join Democrats in finding a path forward to protect and preserve people's health care and their nutrition. This isn't rocket science by any means. And there are some politicians, and far too many right now, who would engage in a messaging competition, like who's winning the shutdown messaging war. No one wins in a shutdown. I was sworn into office in 2019 for the very first time in the middle of the other longest Trump shutdown. And here we are right now, Trump's second term. I've heard for the last 10 months how he and the GOP were delivered a sweeping mandate in this country. And all that has really led to is chaos, dysfunction, record corruption in our government, and higher costs for the people who I represent. So, I think that right now they have to come to the table with things that they have worked with Democrats on in the past. We have always funded SNAP. It's one of the most popular programs in our country. The fact that they are fighting against feeding hungry kids in court is an abomination and something that I don't think anyone understands. The fact that they're spending more of their time constructing ballrooms and giving $40 billion bailouts to Argentina rather than making sure people can afford their health care in our country is just beyond the pale. And the fact that they are willing to give a tax cut to giant corporations and billionaires in our country while making the biggest cut to health care that is going to cause hospitals to shutter, seniors from getting evicted from assisted living centers, and people not being able to go see a doctor is just insane. So I don't think we're being unreasonable here. I think that there is absolutely a path forward, one that when we were in the majority, we carved out pretty responsibly. We never let the government shut down. We found a way to work with Republicans to get their votes, and they need to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you both very much. So, building on that, this week's elections in New Jersey and Virginia and California, do you see those having any impact? What's your interpretation of how Democrats did this week, and if that will have any impact on the tenor of discussions in DC?
Yeah. You want me to just alternate?
Alternate, yeah.
Look, Democrats had a major win. The American people had a major win. So many of in every district across the country, mine included right here in Fitchburg, we saw huge swings to the right. People who voted for Trump, people who voted, Republican elsewhere on the ticket. And that happens when people can't afford their basic needs, right? They're unhappy. They want change. What this administration has delivered is anything but the needs that people really were calling for. They want to be able to afford their groceries. They want to be able to open up their electricity bill and not be completely panicked by their inability to pay for it. They want to make sure that they can, feed a family, keep a roof over their head, and most importantly, give hope to their children that they will actually have a better life than they have. I mean, I grew up under those tenets. I was able to do better than my parents did. It's a source of American pride and family pride for us. And frankly, the Republicans are systematically just getting rid of the American dream. And that's something that we cannot let stand. And I think people went to the ballot box and they actually shifted their vote. If you look at the demographics that voted for Trump in the last election, they changed. They voted for Mikey Sherrill for governor in New Jersey. They voted for Abigail Spanberger in Virginia. They voted for Prop 50 because they don't want to see their election rigged. They voted for Mamdani because he ran on a platform that spoke to the economic anxiety that New Yorkers feel. And we all have to recognize that affordability is the number one issue right now in our country. I know it's the number one issue for people in North Central Massachusetts, in the Merrimack Valley, in Jim's district in Worcester County, across the board. And so, we have to get to work on that. Congress has to figure out ways to work together and to meet that need. This is not about who has the better message, partisanship, digging in. This is about governing and showing that we can come together and not accept or tolerate a Congress that's in gridlock or an executive who wants to bypass Congress and only do everything through executive action. That's not the way our system of government was built. And so I do think that the wins are important. I think that hopefully it's a wake-up call for the GOP to figure out that this is not the path that the American people want to be on. They want the story to sort of end with us working together and not being so, partisan or just capitulating to Donald Trump and the priorities that he's basically turned his back on between the election year and his first year in office, and get Congress back up and running.
So I'll agree with everything she just said. I mean, I think the issue was affordability. And let me just be blunt. America is too goddamn expensive. I mean, you go into a supermarket, prices are going up. You see people putting items back because what they budgeted for food the last several months is not enough to buy what they were able to buy in December or November of last year. This whole issue over healthcare, and when people are seeing their healthcare premiums double, triple, or quadruple, I mean that's about affordability. And energy costs are going up, rents are going up, everything is going up. People's wages aren't necessarily going up, but everything else is going up. And I think people, were hoping, and I say this, even though I didn't agree with Donald Trump, but I didn't support him in the last election, but I mean, he campaigned on America first. He said, I'm going to address issues of affordability. And I think we can make a case that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden failed in the sense that they didn't acknowledge that people were suffering and try to make everything look like it was all perfect. Well, it wasn't. We were making progress, but it was still difficult for regular working families in this country. And so, again, hundreds of millions of dollars invested in a Marie Antoinette ballroom, new gold-plated windows and mirrors in the Lincoln bathroom. I mean, all that stuff, seemed to be tone deaf, I think, for most people in this country when they were like, what are you doing about lowering my costs? I mean, I thought that's what you promised you were going to do. And you've done nothing to do that. And the tariffs, on top of everything else, that's pushing costs up. And by the way, I think what he's doing on the tariffs is unconstitutional and illegal. And maybe the Supreme Court will bear that out in the coming days. But all this stuff has increased costs on people. And the president, and this is the thing that kind of really puzzles me, is that they don't seem to get it yet. I heard the president being interviewed, and he said, no, costs are going down. Well, you know what? Not around here. No, I don't know anybody who's telling me that. And he made the point today that, Walmart's annual Thanksgiving basket is 25% less this Thanksgiving than last Thanksgiving. And then some news people did an analysis, and the reason why is there's 25% less stuff in the Walmart basket this year than there was last year. And so people are not going to be fooled. I used to work for a guy named Joe Moakley, a congressman from South Boston, and he always used to say to me, people look at life through their kitchen window. Every day they get up and it's like, I mean, can I afford this? Can I afford that? Can I make my bills? All that kind of stuff. I really think that's true. And when people can't afford the basic needs, and these are working people, by the way, people who are working, some people working 2 or 3 jobs trying to make ends meet, and they still can't pay all their bills, there's a problem. And so this is not about, I always tell people, this is not about Democrat versus Republican or left versus right, even though some of the pundits want to make it that way. I think it's getting to the point where it's like the bottom versus the top. And people who are not, who don't benefit from some of the corporate tax breaks and some of the tax breaks from millionaires and billionaires who don't get invited to Mar-a-Lago, people who don't fall in that category, people are hurting. And we're hearing it all the time. So I think that's what the election was about. And if Democrats continue to focus in on those issues, I think it looks good for the midterms. And to the extent the Republicans don't, I think they ignore these issues at their own peril.
Thank you very much. This is on, Manuel. You mentioned tariffs, and this week, of course, the Supreme Court was hearing arguments about the power of the president to unilaterally impose tariffs. Recent analyses from S&P Global show tariffs are costing businesses upward of $1.2 trillion in 2025, with about 2/3 of those costs being passed on to consumers. I'm curious what feedback you're receiving from business leaders in North Central Massachusetts, especially those dependent on global supply chains, about how tariffs are affecting their operations.
Almost universally, I'm hearing complaints from the business community. I mean, look, go get a hamburger now. Look at how much that's gone up. I mean, and again, we shouldn't be instructing people to buy Argentinian beef. We should be telling people to support our farmers and our ranchers here in the United States. I do this annual farm tour, and I was out in, I think it was in Northborough, and these 2 business people who run a coffee roasting business came over and brought me some coffee, and they asked me to stop by afterwards. So this was like in in August. And we don't produce a lot of coffee in the United States. We grow coffee in Hawaii, but we get it from, South America, from Africa, from other parts of the world. They were telling me that they had to raise their prices at that time by 15%. They had to raise them by another 15%. So, we have this now coffee tax, just coffee. Everybody likes coffee. And now we're paying more for coffee. It's crazy, but we're paying more for everything, not just food, but also, a lot of the stuff we make in the United States. Some of the components come from other countries. I met with this ambassador to Switzerland the other day. He wanted to know, what did we do to you? Why are we getting a tariff on us? I'm like, I don't even know. I mean, I love Swiss chocolate, right? But the point of the matter is, why are we, and the back and forth with Canada? I mean, because they ran a commercial that Trump didn't like. We've suspended trade talks and we're slapping a tariff on them. I mean, maybe if you're the president and you're, vengeful, it's fun to say, I'm going to get you back, but it's really bad for the country. It's really bad for the country. And what's happening right now is that the countries that used to buy stuff from us are now buying it from other places. I'm on the agriculture committee too. Soybean farmers all over the United States are freaked out. China's now buying all the soybeans from Argentina and Brazil, and so they're out of luck. And there's nobody to make up the difference. The president says we're gonna help subsidize some of these interests that are being hurt by the tariffs, although he won't use the word hurt. But farmers don't want to be subsidized. They want to get a fair price for what they produce. Same with businesses. No one wants a bailout. They just want to make, they work hard. They just want to make sure that they get a fair price. That's it. And it's hard when you put on these tariffs and when other countries reciprocate. And so, again, the Supreme Court is hearing this case right now. I think the Constitution is very clear that we in Congress are the ones who are supposed to decide on these tariffs. I was pleasantly surprised pleased to hear, justices on the left and on the right all kind of question the policy with some skepticism. We'll see what happens. But and by the way, the people who are paying for the tariffs are all of you. I mean, higher prices, it's a tax on the American people. And that's one of the reasons why the cost of living is going up.
I don't have a lot to add there. I do sympathize with all of the small business owners who are in the room right now who just need basic things to forecast a business plan, a P&L, a balance sheet for the good of your employees, for the good of your future. You need certainty. You can't just be going on the whims of the president, which leader is playing ball, who's offended who. That's not a trade or tariff policy that companies, big or small, can live with. So it doesn't matter if we're talking about, large defense companies or defense suppliers, microelectronic companies, green hydrogen companies. I mean, everyone is being impacted right now, which means that they're not hiring, they're not growing, they're literally paralyzed because they don't know if their costs are going to skyrocket and they have to make really unthinkable decisions in terms of their workforce. And we're just seeing that play out all across the district, all across Jim, all across the state. So I do hope that the Supreme Court, rules that Congress should be involved in tariff and tax policy as dictated by our Constitution, and that the president doesn't just have this unilateral ability to exact, tariffs. And look, I say that with recognition or acknowledgement that when tariffs are strategic and they can help get manufacturing back to the United States, it could be a good thing. But that's not what we're seeing right now. There is no strategy, there is no transparency, there is no discussion or debate around why we have this tariff policy. It's just on the whims of a rogue administration, and it really has painful consequences for small businesses and large employers.
So what's your outlook on what foreign trade policy will look like in the year ahead with all these factors?
Look, I'm not super optimistic that a lot is going to change. I maybe a Supreme Court decision will change all of that, and it will force, Republicans to the table, the Trump to work with Congress. We are about to embark on renegotiating USMCA, which is our trade agreement with Mexico and Canada. But like Jim said, the president will just exact revenge when he sees a video that he doesn't like by, Ontario. That does not help our story or our leverage at the negotiating table for that agreement. All it does is sort of piss our allies off, which has been happening more and more over these past 10 months. So I think, look, we have a lot of fights before us. Jim and I want nothing more than to have Republicans get off of vacation, call the House back into session so that we can do our jobs. We can end the shutdown. We can make sure people have health care. They can make sure SNAP is restored. And then we can make sure that we have regular order, that, we are a functioning body that is not irrelevant under this president, that we have a speaker who doesn't just work for this president, but rather we get the body to work as it's supposed to, which is having 435 representatives come and fight for the 700 to 730,000 people that we represent and have that debate. That's not happening right now, but there is an opportunity, I think, with Supreme Court decisions, with things like last Tuesday's election, with all the sort of mobilization of regular people who are flooding the zone, whether it's town meetings or phone calls to offices or protest, frankly. That pressure is really important to get Republicans off their position right now and to work with us. I mean, they literally have majorities. They run the House, they run the Senate, and they run the White House. But they don't get to, muzzle the hundreds of millions of people who are demanding that Congress work again.
Look, I do lots of town halls and community meetings, and I can tell you that, in all honesty, I'm not universally loved. But even amongst the people who don't, who are more combative when we have exchanges, the one thing that we seem to agree on is that it is unacceptable for the U.S. House of Representatives to not meet. I mean, basically, the Speaker of the House has abolished the U.S. House of Representatives. There are lots of things we could do in addition to opening up to government, but even before that. I mean, we have a bunch of appropriation bills we have to do. There are other matters that need to be addressed. And so, you can still have the Congress operating even in a shutdown. But if we're together, you may be able to work things out. I've never, ever seen anything quite like this. And I think there's two reasons why we're not meeting formally. One is because I think a lot of Republicans agree with us on we got to do something with the healthcare crisis. I mean, we can't let tens of millions of people, see their healthcare premiums double or triple. Then there's the other reason, which is that if we come back into session, the Speaker will have no choice but to swear in a Congresswoman-elect Adelita Grijalva from Arizona. And if she gets sworn in, and as it's just been 40-something days now since she's won. It's on. Talk about not respecting democracy. But she would be the 218th signature on a discharge petition to force a vote to release the Epstein files. And so the president doesn't want that to happen. I have no idea why. But the point of the matter is, that to basically not allow the House of Representatives to meet, to abolish the House of Representatives, to not allow us to do hearings, to not allow us to be a check on what is happening in the executive branch. The Senate is meeting, but we're not. I think is unforgivable. I think it is doing great damage to the institution, because this is a terrible, terrible precedent. It's also doing great harm to the American people, who, quite frankly, deserve a functioning Congress. And look, I say this all the time. My Republican friends are always having amendments to put harsher work requirements on poor people on SNAP and harsher work requirements for people on Medicaid, all that kind of stuff. Well, I want to have an amendment for a harsher work requirement on members of Congress. If you don't show up, then you shouldn't get a goddamn paycheck.
That's right.
And can I just say one thing on that? Because I do think you all work with our teams. Jake and Caitlin are our teams represented here today. 39 days without a paycheck for them, still working their tails off, picking up the phone, doing constituent services. I mean, we've all heard the stories, whether it's TSA agents or air traffic controllers, but it's also, folks who are, in your community who are serving people, and I think that's why they just ate their lunches. So I just want to say thank you so much for the work that you do.
And Aladia, Andrew too.
So you mentioned town halls and strong feelings about the state of the world right now. Immigration enforcement seems to be obviously a hot button issue as enforcement activities have intensified over the past year. I'm curious if you can share what impact you're seeing on the workforce in your districts, particularly in sectors like agriculture, hospitality, healthcare, and manufacturing.
Of course, we're seeing people who aren't showing up to work, people who aren't going to church, kids who aren't going to school, and who can blame them? This morning, everyone read the news, if they didn't see it sooner than that, about what happened in Fitchburg yesterday, where a woman and her husband and their toddler were in a car surrounded by ICE for 2 hours. There's a standoff. Woman is getting ripped out of the car, while the child is like confused and crying. The husband is what looks to be like he's having a seizure, and they're not stopping, right? They're unmasked. They're in unidentified vehicles. They are acting like they've got no accountability to anyone. Puts the Fitchburg Police Department in a horrible position because they have to sort of keep the peace, because now there are, 50 or so people who are crying themselves because this is a horrific thing to see in their community, in their neighborhood. Thankfully, because of so many of the Know Your Rights forums that we've done with the Attorney General, they were peaceful. They were videoing. They were collecting evidence to hold, this administration and ICE agents who are not rounding up the most violent criminals in our country the way this president sort of campaigned on. They have gone way beyond what anybody voted on, what anybody thought needed to happen in our communities. And it's happening here in Massachusetts. And it is way beyond, I think, what people can stomach. I know that people come to our town meetings and they're just searching for what can be done to stop this. This is not supposed to happen in our country. We have due process for a reason. We are a country of laws, and right now it feels like they're being violated in our streets and in our neighborhoods. So, look, our immigration system is broken. There's no question. But if you need any proof that the GOP would rather use this as a talking point or a fear tactic in an election year, just look at what they're doing right now. They're not following up securing the border with let's fix our immigration system. Let's make sure that we deport vicious criminals while safeguarding due process, that we're allowing asylum and workers to come into our country through a process that isn't bogged down in years and years of waiting and cost. They're not doing any of that. There is bipartisan agreement. We know that, rank and file. If we've got the Dignity Act, we've got lots of legislation that would secure our border and update our outdated immigration system. But this president doesn't have any interest in solving that problem. He thinks it's a political winner. And that, I think, is what people hate about Washington. I think people in our communities deserve better. and they're going to demand better. And so, that is something that it feels like it's so elusive because we've talked about it for decades and it hasn't gotten done. But I think everybody in our communities are learning pretty valuable lessons that when a system like this can just remain broken, how that impacts people who they love and they know. So I think it really is on all of us to make sure that we finish the job and we make sure that we come together and pass responsible immigration and humane immigration reform.
We all need to do a better job about reminding people the value of immigrants in our community. And quite frankly, we haven't been as good at that over the years as, quite frankly, we needed to be. And so there's a narrative out there that doesn't reflect the reality. I represent a lot of farms. My district goes all way out west. I will tell you that those seasonal workers that come in are essential for these farms to be able to survive. I visited a nursing home not too far away from here, and an incredible place. And the owner of the facility said to me that a significant number of people working at this facility are Haitian migrants who are here legally under temporary protected status that Trump is now trying to overturn. If he is successful and we can no longer retain these workers, we cannot accommodate every single person that is here right now. And he said, to be honest with you, there's not a line of people wanting to do this work. We pay a decent wage, but for whatever reason, a lot of people don't want to go into this field. I mean, if in fact this gets out of control even more, our businesses, our farms, the hospitality industry, you name it, are going to feel it in a way where it's going to do great damage to our economy. In the area of medical research, I represent UMass Chan Medical School, right? The hoops that researchers and scientists have to now jump through to be able to do their research at UMass, and now they want to raise the cost of it to like $100,000. I mean, it ain't going to happen. So that means we're not going to have the best and the brightest coming to find cures to some of the worst diseases that we're faced with. On top of that, they're cutting NIH, which is making things worse. But I think we have to do a better job. Like, we want secure borders, absolutely. But immigration is like who we are. And I don't know how many people in this room can trace your genealogy back to this land, but I bet very few of us can. And so this just has to stop. It is out of control. We can't even have a discussion about this issue in Washington without people, demagoguing the issue. And again, going back to town halls, some of the questions you get are just like, where the hell did this come from? It's just stuff that's not based on reality. But we all have to do a better job, of setting the record straight and reminding people of the value of the immigrant community here in the United States and how essential it is to our economic well-being.
Thank you very much. I'm realizing every one of these questions are being strapless. So this isn't an easy one either, but artificial intelligence. It's rapidly transforming businesses in our region, and I'm curious to hear about federal policies that are being considered to address AI's infrastructure needs, particularly energy demands, and the workforce impacts throughout automation. Congresswoman Trahan, given your own technology focus, how should businesses in our region prepare for and adapt to the AI challenges?
Yep. It is a great question. And frankly, it's one of the opportunity costs that, when you don't have a functioning government and we're home for as long as we have been, AI is rapidly developing and it is rapidly being deployed. And we want to make sure that we have responsible AI. Unfortunately, even in the first part of this year, the one thing that the Republicans really focused on was making sure that there was a moratorium on any state laws governing AI. Not like, how do we come together and make sure that we're putting the proper guardrails in place? Look, I am a believer in the positivity of AI. I've seen it in action where, at a life science company, you can literally do what would have taken months in a day. It's just the incredible computing power is going to mean that we're going to be able to accelerate getting the next treatment, getting the next cure or therapy proven out. Small businesses, I talk to small businesses all the time. I would say use it, right? There's lots of chatbots, there's lots of automation, there's lots of AI capability. I would experiment with it. I think our office definitely has. There's a lot of great things. It doesn't, sort of replace any one of us, but it can make us much more productive. And then come up with sort of employment-wide guardrails for how you plan to use it or how you plan to deploy it, so that it's bought in by folks in your business or your organization. Frankly, we need to get back to work because these are really big issues that are going to have enormous impact on our country and frankly on the world. China is loving the fact that right now we are completely dysfunctional because they are, as you would expect from an adversary, they are ramping up their investment and their communication with our allies on what standards should look like, and those are their standards. So the longer that we are, in a shutdown or fighting over people having health care in our country, we are allowing China to sort of win in AI or to set the standard for AI. And it's something that we have such an enormous stake. We have the most innovative minds in our country. We've got incredible technological capability in our country. This is not a place where we can cede any ground to anybody in the world. And frankly, I'll just say one more thing on this because I don't want to see any sort of mistakes repeated from the past. We know that AI is going to have it's going to present workforce challenges. And we need to be honest about what those are going to be as we kind of see the promise of AI in sort of efficiencies and productivity. But we also need to know that it's not going to be without its challenges for our workforce. And it might be, our white collar workforce, people who have studied their whole life and, computer engineering or data processing or whatnot. But we have to get in front of that. That is why we need policy in place to make sure that we're not only having responsible AI and great standards in place sector by sector in our country, but that we also are preparing for whatever displacement there is going to be for employees, and that we are just way ahead of that in terms of retraining or standards around how that will be deployed, whether it's in healthcare or defense or whatnot. So I think that this is an area where people would expect government to have their heads down on a problem or a promise that is really going to be so transformative. And it's what people should expect us to be working on, not, being home in our districts fighting for food for hungry kids.
Let me just say briefly, there are energy concerns that we need to deal with, and then the issue of weaponization of some of these technologies. And I think that's a big issue where Congress needs to put some guardrails in and some regulation. Look what's going on with so many social media platforms. They're being weaponized. And, gone are the days where we all read, the local newspaper or the Boston Globe or the New York Times. People are getting their information from various sources, and some of these sources are manipulating them. I'm really watching the sale of TikTok because the person who put in the highest bid was rejected for an ally of President Trump's. I have a feeling that the reason why is so that they can basically turn it into a platform that gets out the news that he wants you to hear. It's great to be here with the president of Fitchburg State University and faculty and students. I mean, because we still need to believe that there are objective facts that all of us should be exposed to. We can come to different conclusions, but we all ought to have the objective facts And I'm worried that we're moving in a direction where that's becoming less and less the case.
Well said.
Thank you. So we're discussing national and international topics, but they have local impact. As we navigate these complex federal policy changes, what's your advice for the Massachusetts businesses and municipalities working with federal agencies?
Was it my turn or yours? I don't remember. Yeah. You know, I simply say stay engaged. I mean, you really have to stay engaged. And I think you have to be truthful. I think we're in an era now where I'm hearing from people, I don't want to make waves or I don't want to complain to a particular federal agency because I'm afraid that that will mean that I won't be able to benefit from a small business grant or from a USDA grant or whatever. You know, and I'm worried about, and I know that there's a great deal of concern about tariffs. I wish there was a bigger resistance, at least visible resistance to the tariffs in the business community. I worry that some of our universities and our colleges are caving in to kind of go along to get along and making compromises that really kind of betray their values. You know, we have libraries that are telling us now in Massachusetts that they depend on some federal aid for their libraries. You know, they're worried about what kind of books they can have on display and whether there'll be, you know, a backlash. But I think this is a moment for honesty and courage and forthrightness. And I think people just have to say it as it is. Doesn't mean you're a Democrat, doesn't mean you're a Republican or an independent. It's just, I mean, you know what you're experiencing, you know what's helping, and you know what's hurting. And I think if you don't tell people what's hurting, if you're not vocal about it with your national organizations, you know, then you know, we don't move the needle. So I mean, you know, we need to hear from you. And certainly if anybody's working with a federal agency where you feel you're being slow walked or you feel you've been unjustly and unfairly treated, please let us know.
Yeah.
So we can kind of go to bat for you. But I think that there has to be kind of a more pushback on kind of the general trend that government is moving in. And this is a little kind of a big topic, but I mean, I'm really worried about like our system of government. I'm worried about our democracy. I'm worried about, you know, whether we're going to continue to adhere to the Constitution. All those things directly impact local businesses. They all do. And sometimes I don't feel the alarm bells are going off as sufficiently as they need to, given the moment that we're in right now. You know, you need to make sure that our government follows the laws. You have to follow the laws. Make sure that, you know, Congress and the executive branch follow the laws. And so that would be my advice.
Yeah, I echo everything that Jim says. I will say that, you know, the federal government has never been like a very easy place to navigate. You know, good chunk of the phone calls that we get on a daily basis are folks who just want to access benefits that they believe that they're owed, or they were supposed to get something in their mail and it didn't come or whatnot. And small businesses as well. Look, this year sort of kicked off with Doge, that was, I'll just remind you, was run by Elon Musk, who yesterday was just given, you know,
$1 trillion.
the ability to make $1 trillion, our first trillionaire. How proud are we? But he like took an axe to programs that, you know, people in our communities rely on. Laid off federal employees that administer those programs, stopped funding the spigot of funds that people had sort of allocated, you know, funds to in their plans, and it's just been really, really hard. You know, we work with the administration to sort of figure out, like, have you gotten your Head Start funds yet? Did the WIC numbers dry up? You know, we're hearing that they're dismantling the Department of Education. Do you have IDA funds? Did you get, you know, how is this all like, and we are literally in the throes of having to figure out and navigate, you know, a federal government that has really been just decimated. and how we're going to work on behalf of our constituents, our small businesses, people who have relied on those programs and those funding sources. So I think what Jim ended with is exactly right. If you're unsure about a program or whether funds are going to come, call our office. There are some agencies they care more about posting on their website that, there's a Democratic shutdown and we're not here because the Democrats want to give health care to illegals, which is a violation of all sorts of acts under our Constitution. But then there are some agencies where there are people there who are picking up the phone and they're like, let me get you an answer. What's happening, I just cannot believe what's happening to our federal workforce, the demoralization, the way they've been treated. I worry about, obviously, our democracy, but I also worry about people signing up for public service in the future. Who would want this job? Who would want to go and wonder if they're going to have to work without pay, or if they're just going to get an email one day from Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, who's never had to rely on a government program, to say, your service is no longer needed. It's total bullshit. So look, you
Sounding like me now.
Yes, I'm happy that he's rubbing off on me. All the good parts. But I mean, we're in the bunker with you. Call us. We're going to try to get you as information as quickly as we can, and then we're going to try to restore government and restore order so that you can build successful businesses in our communities. Thanks.
Thank you very much. One more really light topic before we get to audience questions is the severe housing affordability crisis affecting Massachusetts, which impacts workforce recruitment and retention across all sectors. Can you tell us a little about what federal initiatives or funding opportunities are available to address housing affordability in our region, and what you're hearing from constituents about the housing crisis and how it's affecting their ability to find workers to afford to live in the communities where they work?
Yeah. It's a great question. It's a big question. And, our Mayor Squally just walked out, but this is where I have to look at, our state delegation, because, we've been able to really celebrate some wins here in this region. The HDIP grants have flowed, to Fitchburg. There's new market rate housing in downtown Gardner. There's Fitchburg Arts Community, which we were able to celebrate Main Street with Fitchburg State. I mean, the state and that employs multiple funding sources that cross, Beacon Hill, and I know our state reps and state senators have really fought for. But also federal tax credits and federal programs. And those are really impactful in communities. There's no question we need so much more supply of all types of housing, affordable market, all types of housing. We are so behind in making the investment in housing. And frankly, we have tools at the federal level. They're not fast enough for what the crisis is demanding. There's no question that, I get asked a lot, not just about, how are we defending and protecting, things that we've really relied upon in our country in terms of programs, but like, what are Democrats going to do differently? And I think this is an area where I can't wait to goddamn win, because we need a national housing policy in our country, like something that looks like, 1930s, 1940s, where like we are committed to building like 2 million units and making sure that my sons and my daughters and your kids have hope again about home ownership, or the fact that they're going to be able to afford a home and build a life for their family. Right now, I really get worried about the lack of hope that our young people have in like their economic future, that they're going to be able to have the same dreams that I had as a kid. And this is a place where the need is great, but where government can really move the needle and really restore hope to people. And that is so important to the American dream in this country, which is really what has inspired generation after generation. So Affordability is absolutely the number one issue, but so much of that stems from rents that people can't afford and mortgages that they don't even have like a sight line on how they're going to get. So I cannot wait to work on that. I feel like Democrats are really excited to talk about what the future of housing looks like in our country. And it's one of the reasons why we're going to work so hard to regain the majority.
And I'm with Laurie. I hope we need a national housing policy, but we're not going to get there in the short term. I mean, based on the way the Congress is and based on who's in the White House right now. So in the short term and immediate term, we need to understand that we all have to put some skin in the game, right? So, the old days of, here's a big federal grant and you can put up, 50 units of affordable housing. Those days are gone. I mean, we could put some money up, but the state has to put some money up, and the local community has to put some money up. I was in Athol I think it was last week, and we had gotten $1 million, for this project to basically bring housing to these two old school buildings, and the state put a bunch of money in. The town of Athol put in some of their federal ARPA monies as well. Yeah. And so everybody put a little bit in, it's happening. The North Star Family Services in Leominster, same thing. So in this short, immediate term, we've got to work with our mayors, our town managers, our select boards, our city councils, our state legislators, state officials, as well as federal officials, to try to figure out how we piece these projects together. And it really does take a village. And when everybody comes together, things happen. And we're beginning to see a lot of stuff happen in Massachusetts, not as fast as we like it, but at least we're moving and you can see things happening.
Thank you both. So we have a lot of questions from the audience. Unfortunately for you, they're no easier than the other ones. So it appears the federal administration seeks to harm two key economic sectors, higher ed and bioed, which are key aspects of the Massachusetts economy. What can be done proactively to protect these states' industries?
I'll start.
Okay. I forget who was the last one.
I have spent time here in Massachusetts meeting with people and companies and organizations that have been impacted by the cuts in NIH funding. And, when you sort of compound the cuts over a 3-year time horizon, that could be like over $3 billion to the state of Massachusetts. It is economically so important, but then it's also like psychologically, we're from Massachusetts. We are sort of where people come for hope, for their surgery that only Children's Hospital can perform, for a cure that, was incubated here, because we have this incredible flywheel of basic research flowing from NIH research into our academic institutions, into our teaching hospitals, into a company that starts as a startup, but then they grow into something like Vertex. That is the reason why we are the life science capital of the world, is because of that virtuous flywheel. And it really does start with NIH funding in our academic institutions. And it's not just it's not just Boston and Cambridge anymore. Life sciences are moving farther west, especially with manufacturing. Our state universities, our research universities, our UMass system, our Fitchburg State, we all have a hand to play in that. And so Massachusetts is disproportionately harmed when this administration is targeting higher ed, when they're targeting basic science, because it's like a foundation of our economy and so many people's careers and livelihoods. And I think the American people are just sort of fed up. It's like, they're not buying what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is selling. They actually don't know what to make of this guy who basically turned his back on someone who was like having a seizure in the Oval Office yesterday and doing chin-ups and dismantling our vaccine advisory panels and making it less safe in our country, especially for our kids. And so I really do feel like people are waking up to the fact that we're not going to have the primacy that we've always had if we don't keep investing in our academic institutions, in our NIH funding, in our life science superiority. And so that is something that it just needs to be restored, and it needs to be restored quickly, and it needs to be something that we, sort of build upon so that we can find the 21st century of, cures in our country. And so I think in Massachusetts, it really hits home. Really happy that the governor and the legislature have stepped up to sort of mitigate some of those funds that have eventually evaporated, just overnight evaporated, but have filled in some of the gaps. But look, these are federal priorities. These are federal programs for a reason, and they're ones that, we have to restore.
Let me just say, and this is going to come as a shock for many of you, but intelligence is not necessarily a prerequisite for serving in Congress or the White House. This doesn't make any sense, what's happening, right? The value of Fitchburg State University is not just that it's going to educate the workforce of tomorrow, right? But it's also an economic driver in Fitchburg. Students there go to local restaurants, they go to local stores, their families come in and they stop and they support local businesses. And some decide, I really like it in Fitchburg, so maybe I'm going to live here. Maybe I'll graduate, I'll buy a home here, I'll rent an apartment here. So, the notion that somehow that investing in colleges and universities is like not a good investment doesn't make any sense to me. And just to build on Laurie's point about in terms of biotech, again, if you are concerned only about saving money, if that's all that drives you, how do we save money? The worst thing you can do is cut medical research or walk away from investing in biotech, because that is an industry that promises to find a cure to Alzheimer's, to Parkinson's disease, to more cancers, to, you name the disease. And if we can find cures, if we can find better ways to manage that, boy, talk about saving money in our healthcare system right now, which cannot sustain the fact that we haven't had major breakthroughs in some of these areas. So this is really short-sighted. This is really short-sighted. All of us, whether we know it or not, have benefited from the medical research that taxpayers have invested in for decades.
Thank you. Related, recently the Biosecure Act seems to be back in play. If that passes, do you believe we will see an increase in large pharma investing into Massachusetts?
Is that the which one? Is that the China? The biosecure. Which one are we?
That's the one that came out of the Select China Committee.
Is that my? Yeah. Yeah. Well. First of all,
We're a little rusty on the names of our bills because we have working on.
No, but the Biosecure Act. The Biosecure Act. Well, let me put it this way. So China is kind of an adversary, a military adversary, and an economic adversary. That's how most members of Congress, view China. But we have to make sure that we are putting in place legislation, that doesn't, cut off our nose in spite of our face. And some of this legislation, I think the current version of the Biosecure Act is not as bad as the previous version. But yeah, we have to be suspect of China's motivations, but we can't overreact to everything, where we are stifling good, sensible investment, in our biotech industry. And I think that's the balance. So I don't know where that's going to end up going. Again, we haven't been in formal session for like 100 years. So
when we look forward to the day where we're debating the Biosecure Act on the House floor, it's a great question, and I think one of the hard parts of being in a shutdown is not only seeing like the pain that's inflicted on so many of our constituents and businesses, but like there is a huge cost for us not being in Washington, actually advancing good policy that we've debated and worked on in committee, that we should be bringing to the House floor for open debate so that people can understand, like, what kind of investments are we going to make in healthcare and life sciences and things like biosecurity? I mean, look, we were on a call with Dr. Dixon from UMass Memorial because they've been really innovative, and I'm going to get off topic here, but like it's insane to me that we need to extend telehealth authorizations. We need to extend things that work in our communities and our providers to actually bring costs down, things like healthcare at home. I was talking about all the investments, like just basically keeping people at home rather than showing up to the emergency room, which is like the most expensive place. And all Congress has to do, which we have bipartisan support to do, is make sure that we are reauthorizing those programs, which we know work. We know it works for mental health, people getting access to more mental health, therapies. We know it helps for keeping seniors who are not wanting to drive to the hospital to bring that care right to their home. And right now, that's all under attack. We can't even authorize those programs because the president has decided that it's his priority to cut $1 trillion from Medicaid. He's decided that he doesn't want to extend ACA premium tax benefits to all the people, to the millions of people who rely on that benefit to provide health care for their family. And so I am maximally frustrated right now because I would love to be answering normal questions about, do we think that's going to pass? Well, hell, I don't know what the hell's going to pass because I don't know when Mike Johnson is going to get his guys off of vacation and bring us back to Washington to have these debates on the floor. So I like Jim. I'm hopeful that this is behind us in the very near future and then we get back to some place of regular order and you all can hold us accountable on the issues and the priorities that we sort of work on in the House. But we are so far from that right now because we're not flying from here to Washington to go vote on anything. Right, that's it. I mean, you really are rubbing off on me. It's like, what happened?
On that note, I'm a little afraid to ask this one because of the language that might get used.
Oh.
But this is from the people, so I bear no
We
responsibility.
won't hurt the messenger.
What are your thoughts or reaction to the threatening letter sent to Governor Maura Healey and Boston Mayor Michelle Wu regarding Massachusetts and the deportation demands of the administration? What would you do to support or protect your districts?
Is it my turn?
Well, it's my turn, but I give break.
Jump on in.
Okay, I'll do it. Yeah. First, we need to support our governor and this administration, and we have a good attorney general who is filing suits every time the administration oversteps its boundaries. But again, I mean the deal here is that we have masked officers showing up. I mean they're not police; they're ICE officers showing up in communities and terrifying our communities. My sister's a teacher in Worcester. I mean, some parents are afraid to bring their kids to school. People are afraid to go to food pantries, and food banks because they're afraid ICE might be out there. And some people are afraid to go to church. I had a priest who came up to me during one of our Know Your Rights sessions and said, "I understand my rights, but a church is a public place. So what do I do if I'm saying mass and ICE agents walk in? I mean, I can't really ask them for a warrant because we're a public place. They can come in. What do we do? How do we protect members of our community?" And the people they're talking about protecting, by and large, are people who are here, who are authorized to be here, but may have a brother or a sister or a cousin or a mother whose status may not be fully, authorized at this particular point. And so they're worried about, getting questioned. We're worried about the implications for someone they care about. We have businesses, the same thing, wondering what do we do? And and I think I talked to a guy who runs a restaurant. He said, I think I've complied with everything, but I'm not, but I'm now being told that even if I think I comply with everything, I may not have. And what does that mean for my business? And I rely, and then we have people who have been working here for years and years and years. This is crazy. So I also think the state ought to investigate, ways in which to hold ICE agents accountable if in fact they violate our laws here in the state. I know that in California they're looking at that right now. But if an ICE agent violates a law that if you violated, you would be arrested for, our police ought to be authorized to arrest them. They ought to be held to account. They need to know that they don't have carte blanche to do whatever the hell they want to do. And we need to raise more awareness in our community. I mean, as I'm learning about what happened in Fitchburg, it seems like members of the community kind of gathered, to try to be a circle of protection around the individual and, who was being picked up. I think we need to do more of that. Well, obviously, we have to conduct ourselves in a nonviolent way. But if we want to change this, we have to be more engaged. Even at the business level, too. I mean, the National Chamber, I think, needs to be more forthright in condemning these policies. They have a chilling impact. And even at some of our colleges and universities, I'm hearing from college presidents and university presidents that they were afraid about, what the impact on some of their students, who may have family members who are here, who, are still going through a process. And by the way, the targets are not just people who are here, quote, in an unauthorized way. They're picking up people who are here legally. Yeah, they're picking up U.S. citizens. And I had a student at WPI who was born in the Dominican Republic, but his whole family's U.S. citizens. One of the questions he asked me is, I walk around with a U.S. passport on me all the time. If ICE picks me up for whatever reason, if I show that passport, is that enough to have them release me immediately? And the answer is, I don't know, because the way this ICE is conducting itself, anything goes. So we all need to be together on this. Again, we all want our borders secure. We all believe that people who commit violent crimes ought to be held to account. That's not what the issue is. This is about terrorizing our communities, and it has to stop.
Couldn't agree more with everything Jim said. And look, it is not okay that Jim and I get extra money in our budget now to secure our home, to secure our office. The rate of political violence it's just had a sharp increase in the last 10 years, but even more so since January 6th. It does not help when the president pardons January 6th criminals and then sort of unleashes people who are wanting and willing to do harm, not just to our democracy, but to the people who were, elected to be there. And so I feel for the governor and for the mayor who are getting death threats. Some of them are right there online. Some of them are calls to their homes. We've experienced them, and it's chilling. It's chilling that is, a trend line in our country right now. And it's happening on both sides. It's happening on all sides. I mean, we've seen record retirements or people who are just walking away from the job because they don't want to put their family through that. And so I think for us, look, it all kind of comes from the top, right? No one wants to live like this. No one wants it to be a constant fight. I can't believe how many times I say the word fight. I don't want to be fighting all the time. I signed up for this job, ran for this job because I want to solve problems. I want to get into a room with maybe someone who doesn't see eye to eye with me, but that we could have a civil conversation and we could work it out and maybe find common ground and advance something meaningful forward. And that's why the majority of people got into these roles. And right now, the top is basically saying, the Trump administration is basically saying, we don't need Congress. We're doing this. This is us against them. I'm on a warpath of retribution. Anybody who ever tried to bring suit against me or said anything, derogatory or critical of me or my policies, he's unleashing what should be an independent Department of Justice on those people, right? On law firms, on higher ed, on businesses in some cases, on the American people. And it's not right. And we have to make sure that, one, we are bringing the tone down, bringing that like volume down wherever we can. And look, we have policy arguments all the time. It is part of my job to make sure that people know that they should be able to afford their health care, and that if we don't extend, these premium tax credits, that they're going to suffer. And the reason that that is even a debate or a conversation in our country is because Republicans are gutting health care. That is very different than me, like, calling for violence against one of my political opponents. And so people understand the difference in that. I think people really do. I mean, it's like, you know it when you see it. And nobody really wants our government to devolve into that kind of rhetoric. And I think that it's going to take all of us to reject it. And it really is going to take all of us to stand by the people who are courageously fighting these, fights at a time when a lot is at stake. So look, Maura Healey and Michelle Wu, they're doing tough jobs in an environment that I'm sure they're trying to shield their children from what's being said about them online, and they're trying to shield their children from, incoming threats. I know I have to do the same thing for my kids. Jim has to do the same thing. And so I think people knowing that, in our state delegation, same thing. You put up a post and you can't believe what's written about that. How many times do you have to take down pictures of your home or, your address that's on the ballot every 2 years? You have to take that down because you're fearful that someone might come to your house while you're not at home, but your kids are home from school. Shouldn't be that way in our country.
My son is 27. He actually reads some of the comments. He gets a kick out of them, though. I mean, but I was on an airplane and a guy came up to me, maybe in his 60s, in a nice suit, and started swearing at me and screaming at me and telling me I should be tried for treason and I'm a criminal, and everybody's now looking at me, right? And so I was trying to think, what can I say to him? I said, well, I'll put you down as undecided. Shut him right up.
I think it's great to end on a laugh line, so how about one more round of applause? We greatly appreciate all your support and hard work and partnership in addressing the needs of this region and the whole state. So as we conclude, once again, I'd like to offer my thanks to our premier sponsor, Fitchburg State University. Then to FATV for capturing this event for viewers. And the photographer in Adobe Studios, thank you. Have a great afternoon, North Central.